Hello everybody, welcome to the Chensor Dynasty here on twitch.tv/jchensor. I am your host, James Chen, aka jchensor, and we are here in February now for, I think this is the first post-Evo Japan Chen reaction episode that I've done. It's been a little bit because obviously I was in Japan for about a little over a week and just had a little bit of extra vacation afterwards, so haven't really had a chance to do as much streaming as I want to, but we're back here for Chen reaction, and we're going to be talking about the Evo Worlds lineup. Now, just to let you guys know as well, if you're wondering what's going on, if you tuned in because you were expecting First Attack, the first educational episode of First Attack in 2020, that'll be coming up right after the Chen reaction. I just want to go ahead and this is the schedule now, as you probably saw earlier this week. I have the schedule, and on Thursdays I start with the Chen reaction / Ask jchensor sections, and then I will jump into the First Attack just to give people the ability to kind of wander in onto the stream and make sure they don't miss a lot of First Attack, which is I'm sure a lot of people are very interested in seeing. So let's do the Chen reaction here. Today we're talking about the Evo lineup. It was revealed on Tuesday, just a couple of days ago. Couple of very surprising elements to this, right? So there were the games that, you know, we expected, right? Street Fighter V, almost guaranteed. Tekken 7, almost guaranteed. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, almost a guarantee. In my opinion, I really believed Grand Blue Fantasy Versus was also going to be a guarantee, right? One, Cygames has been a sponsor of Evo in the past. Two, it's just one of the big games. Everybody's super excited for this game, and it's going to be a really great way to bring in new audiences, etc., etc. Grand Blue Fantasy Versus has a lot of potential to bring in a very large audience, so I felt like that was a guarantee. The ones that were a little bit surprising, that, you know, were obviously on the bubble. We have Dragon Ball Fighters, we have Under Night In Birth, CLR, Uniclair, Soul Calibur 6, and Samurai Shodown. Those four were kind of on the bubble. And then the big shocker was that they are doing a 20th anniversary Marvel vs. Capcom 2 tournament. In fact, when they called it tournament, it's called 2 Ornament. So like the 2 is like the T, you know how people do stuff like that, like 13 Ghosts or whatever like that. But MVC2 is back into the lineup, and that part is pretty wild. So and pretty exciting as well. Obviously MVC2 has a very storied history, I guess you can call it, at Evo. And so here you go. Here you see the lineup here. This is the official lineup here. Let's just bring this graphic up over here. So Under Night In Birth, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Dragon Ball Fighters, Tekken 7, MVC2, and they even put it in the middle too. Street Fighter V, Soul Calibur 6, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and Samurai Shodown. So those are the games that are ending up at Evo this year. Now, obviously, there's a couple of surprises. I mean, the 4 games that, like I said, I feel like we're going to be there were a given. So here's, what about the 4, like, little fringe games, right? So Samurai Shodown obviously had a big showing last year, and a very interesting storyline as well. You know, the top 8 was rife full of former Evo champions, former Evo top 8 finishers, and, you know, it was a really kind of a boon for old school players. It was really cool. Oh, is it 20 Ornament? I thought it was T20UR blah 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 blah. Yeah, I know it's for the 20th anniversary, but I thought it was T20 Ornament. Anyway, whatever. But, you know, so Samurai Shodown, however, a lot of people have been talking about how it seems to have fallen off a little bit, etc., etc. But apparently that isn't the case. Evo has decided to bring Samurai Shodown back. I am personally happy with this. I think Samurai Shodown is a fantastic game. In fact, the Patreon supporters of UltraChenTV will be able to see my thoughts on Samurai Shodown very soon, potentially tomorrow. But I'm happy to see it return. I'm really glad to see it return. As to why it's coming back, I'm not sure. Obviously, there's really hard to know why a lot of games are in or out. The one thing I do want to say is a lot of people always joke about, or probably not even joke about it. They always talk about, oh, this developer paid more than that developer, and that's why it's not there, etc., etc. I mean, if you really honestly want to believe that SNK had more money than some of these other companies and got Samurai Shodown into the Evo lineup, if you really think that that's the case, I don't know. I've got a boat to sell you, basically. I've got a boat to sell you. To be honest with you, though, one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is I always feel like Evo does try to make sure that they find games with different amounts of entrants. I don't know if they're always trying to go for the game with the most amount of entrants, to be honest with you, because if they do, it makes it that much harder to run the tournament. So a lot of times I feel like they try to find tournaments with smaller entry numbers that they can use to finish out on Friday, right? MVC2 feels like that's filling the slot, and by making it an invitational, that's almost a guaranteed way to make sure that they don't have to run as many events. They can still have 9 games without having to dedicate as much time and effort into all 9 games, right? If you had 9 games with 2,000 entrants each, that would be rough for them. And so I feel like they intentionally try to spread out, the sizes of them. And so I feel like Samurai Shodown might be one of the games that they feel like is going to be on the smaller side. Same with Soul Calibur 6. I feel like both of these games were kind of in the same precarious position to be dropped. And I'm happy that both of them are there because I really enjoy both of the games. I really like that Soul Calibur is there along with Tekken because the 3D games have always had kind of like a storied history in the fighting game community. To have both of them there is wonderful, continuing the representation of the 3D styled Bandai Namco fighters. Shoutouts to NDO for the subscription. Suck my nuts, NDO. Hope you know the inside joke. But, that's kind of the situation. So I'm really happy to see Soul Calibur back and Samurai Shodown. They might be expecting lower numbers from these games, and that's why they have them included. This is my own personal theory. I haven't heard anything from anybody. This is just kind of what I believe, that putting them in there is because they're expecting lower numbers. Shout outs to Shin Jones for the subscription. Suck my nuts, Shin Jones. Hope you know the inside joke. Do you think less frequent patching is affecting MK11 with older NRS game patches with more frequent? So people are talking about the changes at least. No, Beyond Two Bulls. I think it's actually. Oh, shout outs to Darth Proto Man. Suck my nuts, Darth Proto Man. Hope you know the inside joke. But I don't think the patching has anything to do with the MK11 stuff. We'll talk about that in a little second. Uniclair, I actually thought was more likely to show up than Soul Calibur 6 and Samurai Shodown because it was a brand new game. It's going to be a brand new version of the game. And I think Eunice was so successful last year. And I think the Evo staff really has appreciated the effort that the community of Eunice has given. They had great anime Evo turnouts before it was an official game. It kept growing, and the game has its own events thanks to Shinobi in Climax of Night, etc., etc. So I feel like the Evo staff recognizes and really wants to reward the kind of community effort that Uni has had, Under Night in Birth, Unib has had. And so I feel like Uniclair was almost more of a given than any of these other games. Now, the interesting part to me is if one of the big games was going to get dropped, I really felt like it was going to be Dragon Ball FighterZ. Before the Chen reaction started, I was talking with my stream. Some people weren't even aware that the Dragon Ball finals were this weekend. I feel like the numbers have dropped for it. I just feel like the entrants haven't been as into it. I know the players themselves are a little frustrated with the game, with baby Goku being a little too strong, GT Goku, etc., etc. I know some people, like even at Fighting Tuesday after Evo Japan, I went there was plenty of Soul Calibur and Tekken players, but Dragon Ball only had like 18 entrants, even though it was like international. It might have been more than 18. I don't want to misrepresent it if I have the numbers wrong, but I just remember there just wasn't that many entrants, and they finished Dragon Ball FighterZ really fast, even though there was all the international players from out of town, etc., etc. So Yeah, so I thought Dragon Ball Fighters might have had a chance of dropping out, but it stayed in there, and then they added MVC2. So the two games that did get dropped were BB Tag, which I really felt like had a very strong chance of dropping out of the lineup. I really was suspicious that BB Tag wasn't going to make it. In fact, in my predictions, I didn't even have BB Tag in there. And then Mortal Kombat 11. Now, this is the weird one. Mortal Kombat 11 is kind of the shocking one for having dropped out of the lineup. This one was the one that caught everybody by surprise, especially the NRS fans out there. If you were watching on the Tuesday show, we had live reactions to the announcement, and obviously David, a big fan of NRS games, was positively crestfallen that the game was not in the lineup. And for me, it's really shocking. Like, there was just no reason why I would have thought they would have, like, I felt like MK11 was almost kind of more on the guaranteed scale, right? Because that's their NRS entry for the year. They've had an NRS game year after year after year after year, right? There hasn't not been an NRS game since MK9. MK9 was there for 2 years, then Injustice, then MK10, then Injustice 2, and then MK11. And so this is the first NRS game that's only managed to survive 1 year. And it's very interesting to me. Now, I don't know, maybe they were looking for one of the higher entry games to pull out of the lineup to make it a little bit more smooth running, to make it flow. There's a lot of thoughts out there as well that perhaps, you know, maybe there's some deal that we don't know about, that they're going to be able to broadcast, let's say, all the top 8s on ESPN2 or something like that. And obviously Mortal Kombat 11 is too violent for that. I know there are a lot of MK players out there who aren't enjoying the game as much right now. I see a lot of chatter all the time on social media about people saying, oh, I don't like MK11, which is odd because I felt like MK11 is actually in a really great position. I feel like it's one of the, you know, a really strong entry in the series. I like the neutral focus of it. I like the systems that the game has. I think it plays really well, etc., etc. Well, all right, but Darth Protoman, so remember, I'm talking about NRS, right? So even though there hasn't been an MK, there's always been an Injustice at least, right? So not having MK, but Injustice has been there. So it's not just Mortal Kombat. I'm just talking NRS games. But this is true beyond two bowls. Evo's not afraid to drop anyone. There was a Marvel game every year, but ended with MVCI. And the interesting thing about it is a lot of people, you know, they complain about this, right? It's funny whenever Evo does a lineup and then they don't include something like KOF 14, and they're like, Evo doesn't care about the small games. They only care about the games that bring numbers. And then when you have a situation where MK11's dropped, they're always like, what? Why would you do that? MK clearly has more entrance and more interest than, you know, Soul Calibur 6, blah, blah, blah. And then people turn around the opposite way and get mad at Evo for different reasons. I frankly kind of like the way that Evo is very unpredictable with their lineup, because you really can't see a common theme of motivations on what game goes in there. I really just feel like they're putting in the games that they just kind of want to see, to be honest with you. You know, so that's why I'm glad to see something like Samurai Shodown still there, Uniclair still there, etc., etc. Now, yeah, side games do get a lot of representation, just like Genobite is saying in the chat, right? So Anime Evo exists out there. I don't know if Anime Evo is going to run an MK11 side tournament. That seems kind of weird because it's not thematically part of their, you know, theme of the anime games and stuff like that. However, Evo has done a lot of work in also rewarding medals and prizes and giving a stage specifically to the side games. You know, games like Sailor Moon were run on, Sailor Moon S were run on the Evo stage last year. MVCI and MVC3 had their spot on the stage last year. They actually get to play like the top 4, top 8 of certain games on those stages during the course of the weekend. Will MK11 be one of those? That just depends on the community. They have to apply for it, and then someone has to go there and actually run it. Do I think people put too much importance on Evo representation? Oh, really? I heard already the guy who runs Combo Breaker is going to run the MK11 event at Evo with David. So Rick Thayer and the Hado and David are gonna run it, huh? Those two guys are gonna run it. That's gonna be really interesting. Darth Protoman, like I said earlier, I don't find Grand Blue a surprise at all. They always have a brand new game every year at Evo. This one has the potential to bring a lot of new players in. Grand Blue is a huge franchise in Asia, right? And it's also one of the most beautiful games that exists right now, and it's very beginner friendly. So I thought Grand Blue Fantasy Versus was a lock, to be honest with you. But back to Nutacon's questions, do I think people put too much importance on Evo representation? I do a little bit. You know, I saw some tweets from people saying like, well, now that MK11 is not at Evo, I have no motivation to play this game anymore. And it just seems kind of silly to me about that. Like, I don't think that that's the way it should work. Obviously, getting into Evo is important, and it really motivates people and motivates players. It's been the case for years and years and years, and I really wish it wasn't the case. You know, it made me happy to see an event, you know, like, for example, Melee is not going anywhere. In fact, Melee kind of got back in it because the documentary kind of brought it to life again and everything, and then the charity thing that voted Melee back in there. The Smashing has always been able to thrive sans Evo, right? And I think that's kind of important. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to continue to see Under Night in Birth supported by Evo, because their scene kept growing without Evo. They did a great job supporting their own community without Evo, and I feel like they kind of got rewarded by being put into Evo. I feel like that's one of the things. If your community relies on Evo to have your game in the lineup so that your scene can be strong, I think that means your scene is not strong, right? I think that's the important thing. I think people need to understand that, and you shouldn't count on being at Evo to keep your community going, and you should always kind of make the assumption that you're not going to be there and do everything you can to keep your game thriving and keep generating the interest, keep generating the content, etc., etc. I think is really important. And so this is going to be a big test for the NRS community. It's going to be a big test to see how they respond to this kind of situation. I frankly hope that they come through with flying colors and keep their game alive. And in the past, I would have said, you know, make sure you go to Evo, throw a hell of a side tournament. That's not necessary anymore because of events like Combo Breaker and CEO and East Coast Throwdown and all of the Big E events that have, you know, supported NRS games throughout the years, etc., etc. There's plenty of other events to go to, but I would like to see them make sure that they support their scene, right? Continue to work hard, continue to keep the interest going, continue to keep the hype going, throw another one of those Florida versus Texas events, etc., etc. Really keep the game on the map, in other words. And, you know, who knows? Maybe it'll come back the next year, because it seems like NRS has intentions to support Mortal Kombat 11 for longer periods of time. So I really, really hope that they'll maintain it. I really, really hope that the scene will continue to keep MK11 alive, because it's really about them. And you know, obviously I'm a big supporter of Evo. Everybody knows that I'm, you know, I've been involved with it before. I've seen the history of it grow, etc., etc. I know why it's so important, but at the same time, I do believe that communities and games need to understand that Evo is not the end all be all of how your community thrives, right? If Under Night in Birth did not become an official Evo game, you know, I doubt Shinobi wouldn't run Climax of Night anymore. I'm sure the Eunice community would have continued to break numbers at a Combo Breaker, at a side tournament, at Evo, at a CEO, etc., etc., etc. And, you know, that's the key right there. That's the key for a community, is that you have to stay strong. Now, again, why was MK11 dropped? Who knows? There's so many reasons, right? Like, it could potentially be because a lot of the NRS games have massive drops in the second year, as someone was mentioning about Injustice. Some people have mentioned, it could be the violence, and Evo just doesn't want to deal with the violence. Maybe NRS has their own plans. Maybe NRS was like, Warner Brothers was like, no, we don't want to be at Evo. Or maybe Warner Brothers got to a point where, like, we're big enough, Evo, you have to pay us to allow you to have Mortal Kombat at the event. There's all sorts of reasons why MK11 might not have shown up there. And for everyone to sit there and speculate and spread rumors, etc., I think is problematic. I think it's disingenuous, because anything you say will be taken as gospel, and pretty soon people are spreading lies around everywhere or just spreading guesses everywhere, and I don't think that that's very good. Now, MVC2 being there is awesome. Like, it's weird because, like, it's cool. We've always wanted them to support older games, and they're bringing one back, and then some people are still unsatisfied with MVC2 being put in there because, like, oh, you know what? Evo is just putting in there. They're not putting any effort. Well, Wizard just announced that they're doing a last chance qualifier at Evo as well. And so I think they're actually going to officially run it themselves as well. NorCal Regionals, April Annihilation, and Combo Breaker were also announced as the other 3 qualifying spots for this tournament already. So they've already been working with the community to provide a bunch of different qualification locations for that. I think it's awesome. Every year I've wanted them to bring back an old game, and so having them actually bring MVC2 back in the lineup, I think is fantastic. I think this is so cool. MVC2, like, battle, shoutouts to Yipes, and see, here we go again, right? It's the same story. Unist, very well supported by its fans. Here we go, great turnouts, everything, etc., makes it into Evo, right? You think that MVC2 would not have made it? Do you think MVC2 would have made it into Evo were it not for Yipes and the Battle of the Strongest? So the Yipes every year does the Battle of the Strongest at the end of the year around Christmas time. And every year it's super hype. And every year it generates a crap ton of Matcherino. And every year it has a ton of viewers. And in fact, Tom Cannon 2 years ago even donated a big giant chunk to the prize pool as well. And so, everybody's a fan of MVC2, and if it wasn't for Yipes running this battle for the strongest, and then just some of the stuff like at Combo Breaker, they had Chaos versus Justin Wan, they had like these little exhibitions and stuff like that. If it wasn't for that community, I don't think that Evo would have put it in there. So it's a great example again of how the people in the community are pushing their own games without Evo in mind, and that's what gets them the attention to actually make it into Evo. And I think that's really, really super important, right? The community builds the hype for MVC, Evo responds. Community builds the hype for Eunice, Evo responds. Exactly, Antiparticle. That's basically how it works. And again, Ramen Rider, look, no, none of that here. None of that here in this chat, okay? Because honestly, Melee is a wonderful game. It is an amazing game. Obviously, Evo kind of wants to keep it probably to one Smash, and Melee wasn't there last year. I expected it to kind of continue that way. But Melee is a fantastic game. Absolutely deserves a spot in Evo. Absolutely would be awesome at Evo again. It's not there, whatever, but there's no reason to speak ill of these games, etc., etc. It's just not the way that I want to spread the feelings around here. Again, I've always been someone who's about supporting all the different games. Now, BB Tag obviously is going to have a presence at Evo regardless. Arxis is going to run their own event there because Evo is a stop on the Arc Revo World Tour. So BB Tag is going to be fine over there. I really do hope, NRS tries to do something, but apparently David and the Hado are going to be running something at Evo for MK11. So that's actually really cool. Super happy about that. So, yeah, again, Malice even says Evo has been responding to the hype. It's one of those situations that I really feel like the community does drive a lot of it, right? And a lot of people get mad at Evo for not following the community or not listening. I actually think it's the opposite. I actually feel like they do a really good job trying to be fair and everything like that. And I really do think outside, like I said, this lineup would have been the absolute, I don't want to say this because this sounds mean, but like, I would have expected MK11 in, not Dragon Ball Fighters, and that probably would have been my ideal lineup. Again, I know people are aware that I'm not the biggest fan of Dragon Ball Fighters. I'm not trying to speak ill of that game as well. I just feel like it's kind of dropped off a little bit, and I know the players even within the community are not as hype about the game at this point. We're not even sure if a Season 3 is coming, etc., etc. However, this weekend at Dragon Ball Finals World Championships, if they come out with these announcements like, here's Season 3, and look at all these game mechanic changes that we're implementing in the game to spice everything up. It's Dragon Ball Fighters Reload or Dragon Ball Fighters Accent Core, and all of a sudden there's all this craziness in there. Oh yeah, we can expect all the hype coming back in, and who knows, maybe Evo was aware of that, and maybe that's why Dragon Ball Fighters is actually in there, right? Maybe that's one of the reasons right there. What about Fighters Megamix? Does anybody actually play Fighters Megamix seriously? But in any case, Power Rangers, yeah, Power Rangers, but Power Rangers is going to have a strong presence at Evo as well, also because the company that made Power Rangers is concluding their Power Rangers World Tour at Evo, so they're going to be running their own tournament there as well. So Power Rangers is already going to have a big presence at Evolution, and it's really kind of turning into that now, right? It's not just about Evo's 9 main games anymore. It's the Evo's 9 main games, but then all these other companies are running their own major events at their booths, etc., etc. Anime Evo is pretty much, you know, officially sanctioned by Evo, considering that they give them medals and prizes and stuff like that to give away, and they have their own stream and their own stage now for all of their top 8s, etc., etc. You know, Evo is really, that's another thing that's important about Evo. Not being one of the 9 main games obviously feels like you've been slighted, but there's a lot of ways to have a presence for your game at the event, regardless of whether or not that you are part of the official lineup or not. And I think that's kind of important. Or what you do is you just take another event and deem that your Evo, right? So that's what Killer Instinct and Skullgirls and Vampire Savior, a lot of the different like older games and newer games have done. Combo Breaker usually is kind of their official, like this is their big tournament, the one that everybody chooses to go to. NRS could do the same. Maybe they just choose to go to Combo Breaker instead to have to treat that as their big event. And that's the nice thing, is that there are enough events out there now, ones that are big and worthy enough, like a Combo Breaker, to house that kind of alternate venue for having a big game. So whether or not NRS shows up to the side tournament at Evo is kind of, I mean, obviously if they did, it would be great. It would be a great sign to the Evo staff that, look, the community is here, the community is strong. But you can still do that by going to Combo Breaker, by going to all the events. Bring up the MK11 numbers. Show the hype that is still there for MK11, because MK11 is, you know, still getting new content. Spawn is coming out pretty soon. A lot of new things still happening for the game. So if there is excitement for the game, show people, go to the events, really talk about it, build up the storylines, really highlight your players, etc., etc. I think that's very important. Talking about lots of different games, but can you explain why Dead or Alive 6 is always ditched at every tournament? It's not necessarily ditched, because there's a lot of Big E has been a big supporter of Dead or Alive, so a lot of his events will have Dead or Alive tournaments, but you will notice that the numbers are not very big. The player base for Dead or Alive 6 is just not very large. There's just not that many people who play the game competitively, and so this is more on, I think, the developers and on the game side, that they just need to work on Dead or Alive 6, promoting it, etc., etc., and the community itself probably needs to do a little bit more work as well. Adding Dead or Alive 6 as a main game of a lot of tournaments, there's so many games out there right now. There are ones that are going to be falling off to the wayside, and Dead or Alive 6 is just unfortunately one of those easy candidates because the scene is a little bit smaller. And yeah, Darth Protoman has said, you know, it feels like MK11 could be more fluid. There's definitely a lot of gameplay issues, you know, with the game, but then again, there's a lot of people who adore the game and how it plays. It really, you know, let's not talk about the gameplay issues necessarily, because there are people who enjoy the game very much, and every one of these games have issues, right? Like a lot of people are, angry at Leroy and Tekken right now, and Street Fighter V. I mean, God, it's gone through 4 years of just people absolutely dumping on the game constantly. So, it's just one of those situations where I don't feel like the gameplay is the important part to focus on right now. If you want to prop your game up, you want to bring it up, have the players play it. The people who do enjoy the game play it and show why it's hype and really spread that kind of knowledge and spread that kind of love for your game, basically. And that's kind of what you want to do. That's kind of the best way to see it. And yeah, Dead or Alive, A Theory says is a failure because people see it as a waifu simulator. I don't want to call it a failure, one, right? And two, there is a little bit of that reputation, which I know they tried to kind of go up against, but they're kind of like the opposite of Mortal Kombat, right? Dead or Alive as a series sells well, and their season passes are expensive because they sell all sorts of costumes. They're like the opposite of MK, right? MK11 tried to cut down on the sexiness and stuff like that, but they ramped up the violence. Dead or Alive, ramps up the sexiness, right? That's their focus of the game. And unfortunately, they've kind of painted themselves into that corner, right? You can't take it away, because when they tried to take a lot of it away for Dead or Alive 6, there was huge backlash. There were so many people mad. I got like tweets all day when Dead or Alive 6 was first announced from people tagging me and being like, this is a scare, like, screw the Team Ninja, why would you do this? Like, this is outrage, 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 right? And so they've kind of painted themselves into this corner where they kind of have to be in that situation. So shout outs to A's Devs for the sub. Suck my nuts, A's Devs. Hope you know the inside joke. They added a lot more of the swimsuit costumes, I think, Instant Riot. Yeah, basically they put it all into the DLC. But that's the situation here. So that's the lineup for Evo here. And obviously the big talk is about MK11. That's the one that I think a lot of people are, shocked about, that they're, really, really, and I've seen a lot of people very upset that it's not going to be there, because there are a lot of fans for it. I know Sonic Fox was very upset about it, etc., etc. But again, you don't have to do this at Evo anymore. That was my mantra from the past. Go to Evo, run a great side tournament, show the staff that you guys are. You don't have to do that. You can do that at Combo Breaker now. You can do that at CEO now, or you can do that at ECT. Just pick an event. Actually, try to pick as many of the events as you can. Really, really showcase the strength of your community. Really showcase the strength of your game. Show people why it's hype. Create cool hype events like the Florida versus Texas thing for MK11. I thought that was fantastic last year. It was one of my favorite things that I watched last year. There's a lot of things you can do, and I really hope that happens. And while it is important, obviously, to be part of the main Evo lineup, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's something that should be the deciding factor of whether your community lives or dies, right? Again, MVC2 is in because the community got hyped for it without Evo. Under Night and Birth series is in because it was something the community got hyped for without Evo. Even Melee before, got in there because it was a community that was strong and hype before, without Evo, right? And so again, if there was no Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Melee would still be in the lineup. I mean, I don't even think that's a question. It's just that Evo wants to keep it to maybe one Smash game, and so they got to pick one or the other. Suck my nuts, Gazzle. Thank you for the subscription. Hope you know the inside joke. That's just the thing, right? The community will always be the determining factor in the end, in my opinion. I think it comes down to the community more than anything else. And, maybe even the Evo staff are seeing stuff like the Ronin Rumble stuff, the Soul Calibur World Tour, and how great it is that people are winning different tournaments from around the world. France, Japan, and America are all super strong with it. There's a lot of great storylines going in there. I don't know, again, what reasons MK11 aren't in. There could be one of a myriad of reasons. It's unfair to speculate and spread rumors that get turned into facts. That's just how the internet works. So, that's just the way it goes. So, but But that's all I have really for the Chen reaction for today. Stay tuned. If you're here on Twitch, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. We're going to do a short Q&A, not too long. This Chen reaction actually went a little longer than I expected. We'll do a very short Q&A where I'll talk to the chat a little bit and answer some questions, but then almost immediately we're going to transition over into the very First Attack 2020. First Attack is the series where I try to teach beginners how to play fighting games. I'm going to try to do a comprehensive, progressive series of educational videos during the course of this year, starting with today. Today is going to be mostly a philosophical, psychological kind of episode where I talk about mindset, etc., but it's a beginning and it's going to lead into a lot more of the meat of First Attack that's going to be coming during the course of the year. So if you guys are waiting for that, that'll be starting up very shortly. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, just check out youtube.com/UltraChenTV. The first episode of First Attack should be out there uploaded already by the time you see this. So definitely check that out. And again, if you guys have a feedback for it, you know what, I'll save that for when I actually do the First Attack. But thank you guys for watching the Chen reaction here. Again, if you guys are on Twitch, stick around for the Q&A. But if you guys are watching this YouTube, please follow youtube.com/UltraChenTV. Like the video by clicking the thumbs up down over there. Give me a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments below as well, what obscure or lesser played fighting game would you like to see brought back in 2021 if they continue this trend? If MVC2 is back here in 2020, what game would you like to see brought back as a retro game for Evo 2021? Let me know in the comments below. But thank you guys, and for those of you here on Twitch, please follow, please subscribe, bits, donations, etc., to keep me going with all the content for all year long. And again, please subscribe if you feel like the content that I am providing you is worth your subscription. So I appreciate it very much. Be right back, guys, for those of you guys on Twitch, and for those of you at YouTube, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys later.